became bitter rivals, and Prost left to join Ferrari. A year ago in the U.S. Grand Prix in Phoenix, a new French star burst on the scene. Jean Alesi battled Senna toe-to-toe, and though he lost the race, Alesi became the symbol of the new competitiveness in Formula-1. He also became Prost's Ferrari teammate. This year in Phoenix, Senna ousted Alesi from the pole position that has become synonymous with the Senna name. He then stood by and watched as Alesi tried to recapture the pole in the closing seconds of qualifying, a bonsai run that ended in disaster. For Senna, a record 53rd career pole. For Alesi, another hard lesson in the reality of the world's premier road racing series. But the pole is just the beginning. Now they will battle for victory. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. A world engrossed in war just 1 week ago can now turn its attention to the happier stripe of sport. And the eyes of the world are on Phoenix, Arizona, and the opening round of the 1991 Formula 1 World Championship, the Iceberg United States Grand Prix. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha. Proud to welcome you to Phoenix and an event we've been planning on here at ESPN since, well, this time last year. A week ago, the new stars of Formula 1 arrived, new cars with new engines, more cylinders, more horsepower, and more mind-blowing speed. Our pictures today will be going out to tens of millions of viewers around the world, and the course they will see here in Phoenix has been streamlined for even better racing action. It has produced the first 100-mile-an-hour lap in average speed in qualifying for today's race, and it should be a great afternoon. With me to call the action once again, ESPN Formula 1 analyst and former Honda Formula 1 factory driver, David Hobbs. David, in the first race of the year, everybody's a potential world champ, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost.
Well, so it seems, Bob. After that 4-month layoff, although the mechanics would probably take issue with those terms, thousands of miles of testing, as we say back in Pryor's Hardwick, rien changé, nothing changes, because on the pole for the 53rd time is Ayrton Senna, a second quicker than the rest of the field. Right alongside him, his old arch enemy and rival, Alain Prost in the factory Ferrari. This morning, Senna was fastest again in the warm-up, but right behind him was Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese in the works Williams-Renaults. They're going to be strong this afternoon. As you said already, lots of new teams, engines, cars, very young drivers, and brand new teams. And with a couple of those down in the pits is Rick de Bruyne.
Well, David, there is little doubt that Senna is the star of today, but if you're looking for the stars of tomorrow, you might want to look back here in the 7th row. 22-year-old Mika Hakkinen, qualifying in the Lotus, did a wonderful job this weekend. Last year, he was the Formula 3 British champion. This year, in his first start, he's showing just how well he can do. This is his first start as a driver. As far as a team, it is a first start for the Eddie Jordan team. It's this car back here with Bertrand Gachot at the wheel, 28 years old. He's had a bit of a checkered career, uncompetitive drives. This is his opportunity to show just how well he can do. A steep learning curve for the team, doing extremely well this weekend just to qualify in the 7th row. We mentioned earlier just how fast and powerful Senna is. He's literally changing this sport. And with more on that is my partner here in pit lane, John Bisignano.
Rick, you're absolutely right. Over the last few years in Formula 1, it's the McLaren team that has been totally dominant. They have been so strong that the officials were actually thinking about giving them a handicap to make things more equal. Well, of course, what really needed to be done was for the other teams to come up to snuff. I can tell you, here in Phoenix in 1991, there are at least 10 cars that are capable of winning a Grand Prix, except for one element. Ayrton Senna. He is the fastest man in Formula 1. And what the constructors are now realizing is that they have to build better cars than the McLaren, not just equal cars. Well, if Senna's fastest, then Alain Prost is best. And over the next 2 hours, we'll figure out which one of those two elements means the most when it comes to securing victory.
All right, thank you, John, as we look down from the Virgin Atlantic Airways Lightship. Now, here's a look at the street circuit here in Phoenix. We mentioned that the course has been changed, and we'd like to show you exactly how. The red portion to the right of your screen, turns 1 through the backstretch on Washington Street, are the parts that have been modified to make this course faster. There is the change, adding a little bit to the first 2 turns and making faster corners down on the eastern end. We rode along with our pole sitter, Ayrton Senna, to take a closer look. David?
Riding with Ayrton Senna yesterday afternoon on his record-breaking qualifying lap on Jefferson Street, up to about 180 miles an hour. Very bumpy, as you can see from this shot, and extremely bumpy in the braking zone here as he goes down to second gear for turn 1.
Now you're entering a new part of the race course. They've added sections, a couple of blocks in each of these turns to give the cars a little more room to work.
As you can see, using every inch of the road there, essential on these street surfaces to use all the road you've got. But of course, judgment plays a very important part, as you'll see just right here. Misses the apex a bit there, has to grab the wheel in second gear as he accelerates up to the box, coming onto another new section.
Now here's the most important new change. Very tight left-hander, and then up through the box, a couple of very fast corners coming up.
A long right-hand sweep. He gets up to fifth, almost immediately goes back to fourth as he clips the apex there on that extremely fast right-hand sweep.
Now here's the point where young Jean Alesi clipped that tire wall just on the right of your screen and destroyed his Ferrari.
Approaching maximum speed now down Washington Street. This is the fastest part of the course, about 185 miles an hour, hard on the brakes into that very deceptive right-hander.
Can't even pick out that corner along the concrete wall. Slower section here. Now we're getting back towards the pit entrance. 2 more corners, and then the most dangerous series of corners of all.
This last right-hander here in second, up to third gear almost straight away. Now here's a double apex. Gets right close to the apex there, and here, and swings wide. Crosses the line, 160 miles an hour, new course record yesterday afternoon.
And that course record at just over 102 miles an hour in average speed, touching 170 on the straightaways. We'll be back to line them up in Phoenix. Arizona in the Wild West, the Valley of the Sun, and the first round of the Formula 1 World Championship, the United States Grand Prix. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Iceberg U.S. Grand Prix is brought to you by Busch. Head for the mountains of Busch. By Acura Automobiles, experience precision-crafted performance. And by Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. The cars are on course, warming tires and engine. There you see your pole sitter, Ayrton Senna, followed by Alain Prost and the red Ferrari. Here's a look at our starting lineup for today's first green light of the year. On the pole, Ayrton Senna of Brazil in the brand new McLaren Honda V12, his 53rd career pole, 102 miles an hour. Next to him, arch rival Alain Prost of France in the Ferrari, 7th in the morning warm-up. He'll be interesting to watch in the first laps. On row 2, Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the new Williams Renault with a semi-automatic gearbox, much like Ferrari's, alongside teammate Nigel Mansell of Great Britain after a crash and a near miss in practice. On row 3, Nelson Piquet, the 3-time world champion from Brazil in the V8 Ford-powered Benetton, next to Jean Alesi in the second-team Ferrari. Row 4, Gerhard Berger in the Marlboro McLaren Honda, next to Roberto Moreno of Brazil in the second Benetton. Row 5, Emanuele Pirro and J.J. Leto in a pair of Dalaras with new V10 engines. Row number 6, Martin Brundle of Great Britain in a V12 Brabham, next to Mika Hakkinen of Finland in a V8-powered Lotus. Row 7, Stefano Modena in a Tyrrell with Honda V10 power, next to Bertrand Gachot in the Ford V8 Jordan. Row 8, Pierluigi Martini of Italy, next to Satoru Nakajima of Japan in the second Tyrrell. Row 9, Nicola Larini of Italy and Ivan Capelli in a Leighton House with a new V10 motor. Eric Bernard of France and Terry Boutsen of Belgium will be on row 10. Row number 11, Aguri Suzuki in a LaRousse with V8 power, next to Gabriele Tarquini in the AGS. Row 12, Maurizio Guglielmin of Brazil and Mark Blundell. And on row 13, the Porsche of Michele Alboreto and Gianni Morbidelli of Italy in the Minardi with Ferrari power.
And don't forget, we've got new rules this year which are aimed at driver infractions on the track. Anybody runs into people, there can be some pretty severe sanctions. So watch out on this first lap. We'll tell you all about that as the race goes on, but they're going to be more careful than usual, I'm sure.
Those are the drivers not in the race. That final row, Michele Alboreto and Gianni Morbidelli, those drivers did not pre-qualify in a morning session on Friday. 26 cars will take the green light. Engines revving to 14,000 RPM. Turn it up. We'll join you in a moment. It's a long hold at the starting line. Very long hold. Now we have a green light. Senna to the left. Prost on the right. As the field clears the start-finish line, the Williams of Patrese and Mansell lighting up the tires as they head into turn 1. Turn one they go. Ayrton Senna is your leader. This is the battle for third place. There is Senna leading overall, followed by Alain Prost in the red number 27 Ferrari.
And right behind him now is Nigel Mansell, who made a dynamite start. Tremendous amount of weaving across, touring and running across the track, but he pulled himself up to third. There you see the cars streaming through. That's the right-hander there.
Behind Mansell, the order is Alesi, Patrese, Berger, Piquet, Moreno, Modena, and Martin Brundle in the top 10.
That is Patrese there, who's coming under pressure now from Gerhard Berger in the Marlboro car. Right behind him is Nelson Piquet.
There is the leader once again. Ayrton Senna in the yellow helmet that he has always worn since his days in karts back in Brazil, followed by Prost and Mansell. There comes Alesi. Patrese going at the bottom of your screen. Gerhard Berger, Nelson Piquet, Roberto Moreno.
There's Bertrand Gachot in the green car of Eddie Jordan. The black and the yellow car there with the Ferrari engines. Somebody looks like they just slipped off the road there.
This is a hard braking area that David talked about in our course description. We had an engine explode in the morning warm-up at that point, and there was lots of oil on the track. There could be excitement there all day long.
Senna's pulling away. In second is Alain Prost here, being pushed hard by Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell staying out of the slipstream, wants to stay out of those sparks. There's that oil on the road as they twitch into turn one. Second gear, tight acceleration up to third, back to second for the next corner here. Of course, the automatic gearbox, or the semi-automatic gearboxes used by the Ferraris and the Williams make that sort of driving much easier, especially on this sort of course where it's nice to be able to keep your hands on the wheel.
You're on board with Jean Alesi after just 23 Formula 1 starts driving for the most esteemed team in all of motorsports, Ferrari.
Down to turn 5 in second gear. As you can hear, pretty slow corner.
This is a new part of the race course.
Very fast right-hand flick here, which leads into that nasty left-hander there. You can see the tyres sticking out, which caught Mr. Alesi out yesterday afternoon. Alesi now giving a lot of pressure to Riccardo Patrese in the Williams.
Alesi led the first 33 laps of this race a year ago, was passed by Ayrton Senna, passed him back, and finally finished second to the great Senna.
Not giving pressure to Patrese, of course, giving pressure to Nigel Mansell in the Williams.
There goes Gerhard Berger in one of the McLaren Hondas. Neither of the McLarens turned a wheel before coming here to Phoenix. All of their testing was done in another car. Once more with Alesi. Flashing on to the front stretch. Jefferson Street in Phoenix, Arizona, reaching speeds of 160 miles an hour.
Giving you an idea of just how bumpy it is, especially on the approach to turn one. Hard on the brakes there. We've seen a lot of tyres locking up there as the suspension bounds over the bumps and locks up the tyres. Few incidents. Turn 2, left-hander up to third. Back down to second for turn 3. Stays in second 2 here.
The cars are all on full tanks, so they are very heavy, about 300 pounds heavier than they are empty. And thus we see a lot of sparks. Your leader is Ayrton Senna over Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Phoenix, Arizona, as Ayrton Senna of Brazil, the reigning Formula 1 world champion, pulls away from the field in a car that hadn't turned a wheel before arriving in Phoenix. The engine, although it's been extensively tested, is basically a new design, and they are concerned about its reliability, but Ayrton Senna has put it on hold, and he is simply running away from this field.
Not only had this car not turned a wheel till it arrived here on Friday, but the amount of testing they'd done in this particular model, the MP46, was very, very limited. The cars were only finished just the week before last, and they'd done limited testing at Estoril. So, pretty brave effort. There's the 28 car of Jean Alesi being hounded by Riccardo Patrese in the blue and yellow Williams. with the new Renault engine. Both these cars, the Ferrari number 28 and the number 6 Williams, have got the semi-automatic gearbox. In morning warm-up this morning, the Williams cars had a bit of a problem with theirs, and there's some worries whether it'll see the race out. Of course, the old gearbox gets really used on a circuit like this.
The leaders are working lap 5 of 82 scheduled here around the 2.3-mile street circuit in Phoenix. Lots of cloud cover overhead. The course is probably cooler than it would otherwise be, certainly cooler than it was last year when we raced in bright sunshine.
And of course, all the drivers here, all the Goodyear cars, that is, running on their softest race compound. That is a D compound. Very soft, and they're not expected to make any stops.
Lacey now coming under fire from the 6 of Riccardo Patrese, the blue and yellow Canon Williams Renault.
Staggering to think that Riccardo Patrese, just going out of the picture there, a cool there he is there, number 6. This is his 209th Grand Prix, and his appetite doesn't seem to have been blunted at all, as he's giving young John Alesi, who's probably 12 years younger than he is, a hard run for his money this afternoon. This long turn, 12 and 13. Very bumpy, comes out close to the wall, under the grandstand opposite the start-finish line.
Look at the beating the driver takes. The onboard camera probably gives you a rough idea of what the driver's eyeballs are doing.
Alesi, talking about eyeballs, Alesi there pulling off one of the tear-off strips on his helmet. Probably got a bit of oil and dust. You can see it on our camera lens. Or it'll be like that on his visor, so he just pulled off one of the tear-off strips going down the straight. But difficult that when it's so bumpy to take your hand off for long. One of the advantages the Ferrari drivers have, of course, they don't have to take their hands off the wheel much to change gear, whereas, as we'll see on the onboard camera with the McLarens, of course, they do.
Despite the cloud cover, it's a warm day here in Phoenix, about 80 degrees. The crowd in shorts and shirt sleeves. This is one of the LaRousse cars in the pits.
That is Eric Bernard, the Frenchman. This team, having a very, very star-crossed beginning to the 1991 season, had their points pulled only just 10 days ago from last year.
Let's get down to Rick DeBrule in the pits.
As you said, Eric Bernard just came in the Lola, spewing liquid out the back. As a matter of fact, I was running up pit lane behind it. My face was getting covered with some kind of liquid coming out of the bottom. You can see the spray that came down. Eric Bernard getting out of the car. This is the end of his day.
You can see graphic evidence of the problem. Losing oil all over the pit area.
That car, you remember last year, had the Lamborghini V12 engine. This year they're back to a Cosworth V8. And here we're back with our leader, who of course has got the Honda V12, leading Ferrari V12 and Renault V10. Ferrari V12 and more Renault V10.
The second place number 27 Ferrari is Alain Prost, followed by Nigel Mansell completing lap 6. John Alesi.
Oh, John Alesi bouncing over those bumps there. You can see just how bumpy it is at the beginning of that braking. Of course, that's the way you're going fastest and the brakes are being applied the hardest.
I don't think we've ever seen a greater exhibition of the difference between smooth drivers like Senna and Prost and the wilder ones like Berger.
There we see Nelson Piquet, the oldest driver in the race, being hounded by young Roberto, well, not so young, Roberto Marino.
They are teammates. Moreno standing in for Sandro Nannini, who was hurt in a helicopter crash at his home in Italy. It actually severed his arm, his right arm, below the elbow. But doctors were able to reattach the arm. And believe it or not, Sandro Nannini is working his fingers, says he plans to be back in a Formula 1 race car. In the meantime, Roberto Moreno, right there with IndyCar experience on his resume, is doing just fine. We saw Eric Bernard get out of his car moments ago. Let's get back to Rick DeBrule with more.
Down in the garage area with Eric Bernard. Eric, what went wrong with the car?
I think everything is all right just before the stop, and it's necessary to know we received the car very late, just before the race, and we learned the car, and we have the young problem on the car, and it's probably a oil canalization block.
Oil canalization box?
Sorry?
The oil canalization box?
Yes, it's an oil engine canalization block.
Eric Bernard out of the race one earlier than he played.
Some French code words there for I think he means the oil system in the block is quit.
The problem is the oil's not in the block.
No, it's all on the floor in pit lane.
Once again, John Alesi bouncing along those bumps.
His car doesn't seem to be as good over those bumps as a lot of the others, especially at the front end. He may have got their damping rate just a little bit wrong for the full tank. It may get better as it gets lighter, but it's more likely to get worse.
Riccardo Patrese in his 209th. Oh, he got a crash on the backstretch.
Is that Tarquini in the...
It looks like perhaps the AG... No, that's the Lotus. That's Mika Hakkinen in his first Formula 1 start. Oh, what a tough break.
Mika Hakkinen has got my choice of the John Alesi of 1991. He is very young, 22. Only done 2 forms of racing before, the Vauxhall Opel in Europe and English Formula 3. Champion at both. And looked really good, didn't he, over the weekend?
He did. This is the Lotus team, founded by Colin Chapman. As we take another look at what happened. Already has them locked up and perhaps touched the wall at this point.
I think he just scraped that wall coming around the last turn, which is one of those things that everybody looks like they're going to do.
Ayrton Senna remains on the lead, coming around to finish lap number 8. A final note on the Lotus team. At around Christmas time, they had no sponsors. They had no engines for those cars, but they revamped their operation. They are back with Judd V8 power and hoping to bring Lotus back to the glory days of old. But it's going to be a long, hard slog. They have a fine young driver in Mika Hakkinen. Here is Jean Alesi once again with Riccardo Patrese and the number 6 just behind him. Look at the cars bounce around.
That is a very, very bad bump just there, and it seems to be affecting Alesi more than anybody else that we have noticed so far. What I have noticed this week is the incredible smoothness of the new McLaren, especially in the hands of Senna. It just looks so smooth around here. They have really got their damping and spring rates just absolutely perfect for this type of street.
Well, that was the point I was trying to make earlier, is that Senna's very smooth, but Gerhard Berger has been all over the racetrack like a sprint car driver.
Now then, Patrese, if he can come out of this double apex left-hander and get really to grips with Jean Alesi, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try and make a pass as they get onto the fast Washington Street. Around this left-hander, this is one that caught Alesi out yesterday. Now I don't think he's quite close enough.
A V10 Renault against a V12 Ferrari.
There's Hakkinen there.
Hakkinen's rolling again.
Now, if Hakkinen hadn't been in the way, Patrese might have been able to pull that off.
Riccardo Patrese turned in just 3 laps in qualifying. 1 to warm up, 1 hot lap that put him right up there in the second row, and 1 cool down. The Williams car's looking good. Gran-Pri circuit in Arizona from the Virgin Atlantic Airways light ship, providing our on-blimp camera, so to speak. We appreciate all of their help. There you see the machine itself. Too bad it's not dark. That's the only airship in the world that is illuminated from the inside. Last night, I'm sure we got a lot of UFO reports here in the Phoenix area as that ship made its way around. There is your leader in the yellow helmet of his native Brazil, Ayrton Senna, the defending world champion, coming around to lap Aguri Suzuki in the LaRousse.
I know that airship gave me a heck of a shot when I staggered out of the Bala. Oh, no.
Martin Brundle. Now, this is the Brabham in new livery this year. They have Yamaha V12 power, another new engine. I understand he had a flat right rear tire that needed changing. It could be a problem with the wheel. Here's Rick de Brule.
Indeed, Martin Brundle is down here. They came in, they went to change the rear tires right away. They got the left rear tire off, did the quick fix. Now they're working on the right rear. They obviously have something broken on the back, and they're trying to fix it. If you look down underneath, you can see the mounting point that's actually sheared. If we look at that's a little bit low. Down here, you can see on the Martin Brundle car, apparently there's something broken. He's still in the car, however. They may try and fix it and get back out.
Well, Martin Brundle is a former sports car world champion. He's not going to want to give up without a fight, but it may be the end of his day.
What I saw then looked horribly broken, and Patrese is trying to break the spirit of Jean Alesi. Hounding him around this track. This is not the easiest racetrack in the world to overtake on, as you can probably imagine, with all these walls everywhere. And Patrese is obviously trying to set up his young counterpart. A lot of experience in that blue and yellow Williams. Coming up on him in the braking area. No, not going to do it this time. This is at the end of Washington Street. Not quite as bumpy there as at the end of Jefferson. Not much opportunity for overtaking here, but of course a driver like Patrese will capitalize on the slightest mistake that Alesi makes. And if he just gives up the throttle for a second or a split second, he's right behind him now. The thing is, how good is the Williams car through this long left-hander? Because it's an extremely important corner. You've got to get the car. Oh, Williams there sliding. Oh, Patrese giving a bit of a kick as he comes out. The Ferrari's probably got a bit more go down this straight. But it's this bump at the end of here that doesn't... No, not going to be able to do it.
Thought perhaps Patrese was trying a little different braking area to avoid that bump. Let's take another look at what just happened to Riccardo Patrese. Here comes the red Ferrari. There, right behind him is Patrese, and there is a concrete wall just to the left.
Now that, you see, cost him probably 3 or 4 tenths of a second, which drops him just out of the ability to outbrake Alesi at the end of the straight. When you're setting yourself up, you set up 2 or 3 corners before to get yourself in the absolute pounce position to nail them.
Now, this is one of the new corners at the very far eastern end of the racetrack. Patrese now dropping back a little bit. maybe that little slide kind of put the fear of God in him. He's going to sit back and think about this for a minute.
Well, the other thing, of course, as I said, they're all using the softest tire compound. He doesn't want, at this stage, with the car relatively full of fuel, to run his tires off.
There's a look at young Jean Alesi, just 26 years of age, and there is the man behind him, Ricardo Patrese. 23 Formula starts for the former 209 for the latter. There is Gerhard Berger. Now, here is a man really under some pressure this weekend. As all Formula fans know, Michael Andretti has been signed to a testing contract with the McLaren team, and the scuttlebutt along the pit lane is this is the man that Michael Andretti may replace with McLaren.
Well, I don't think he's going to replace Ayrton Senna. That's for damn sure. No. But no, Berger has got tremendous pressure on him this year because Michael Andretti tested the car. Roberto Moreno getting pretty close to the wall there.
Let's move back a little bit past Gerhard Berger and pick up the car of Nelson Piquet, winner of the last two events in Japan and Australia last year, much to the delight of the Benetton Ford team. There is Nelson Piquet, the three-time former world champion from Brazil. Now they're driving a V8 car, a special V8 called the HB model, built by Ford. There's Roberto Moreno, his teammate.
The highest revving V8 ever built, so we're led to believe. Revs to a cool 13,000 RPM, and the Series 5 engine is just around the corner.
They're using last year's B190 model. They have a new car coming for the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, Italy, which we'll be seeing here on ESPN. There's a look at the team profile. Camel Benetton Ford from Whitney in Oxfordshire. David will correct my spelling and my pronunciation if I'm wrong. The Benetton B190 with a new car coming, the 191, from the pen of the most talented designer in Formula 1, John Barnard. A V8 engine, which a lot of people say is not the way to go in Formula 1 against the V10s and V12s. And Pirelli tires this year. This was the major defection from the ranks of Goodyear, taking on Pirelli because the Italian Pirelli maker has promised them all sorts of support, special tires for their chassis to make them as competitive as possible.
Piquet pulling away a little bit. And there is Stefano Modena, another Italian in the Tyrrell. Now, of course, with the V10 Honda, the same Honda engine that powered the McLarens to the World Championship the last 2 years, is now sitting in the Tyrrell there, much to Tyrrell's happiness, I'm sure. They've got some good sponsorship from the Braun people in Germany. And Stefano Modena is showing his colours this afternoon, hanging right in there in 9th place.
We have completed 14 of 82 laps as you watch Stefano Modena make his way around. The first time he came to Phoenix 3 years ago, he asked if he would be able to see Indians when he came here. And in fact, he can. Welcome to the West, young man. A lot of people think Stefano Modena, well, to put it positively, has his best opportunity ever. To put it negatively, has no more excuses. He's got a great Tyrrell chassis. He has that Honda V10 engine that has championship background. And everybody expects Stefano Modena.
Well, of course, it was the Tyrrell. It was this same chassis. Their chassis has not changed as yet, not significantly, other than to put the V10 engine in. Of course, it was the Tyrrell in the hands of Jean Alesi last year that was such a sensation here and on the streets of Monte Carlo when he battled every inch of the way with Senna.
Which has that distinctive anhedral front wing with the raised nose and the wing dropping down. Now let's pick up our leader, Ayrton Senna, once again, coming around to complete lap 14, 6.8 seconds ahead of Alain Prost. We'll ride on board now with a brand new McLaren V12 Honda. We'll turn up the microphone and get a listen to the sound of the newest engine in Formula 1. Of Phoenix, Arizona, down 3rd Street, a left onto Adams, another left onto 5th Street, and it'll be going that way for another 75 laps or so. We'll be back to Phoenix, Arizona. You're watching Ayrton Senna of Brazil, who has led the 1991 Formula 1 season opener here on the streets of Phoenix, Arizona from the beginning. He leads Alain Prost in a Ferrari from 7.6 seconds. Another second and a half back to Nigel Mansell in third. Mika Hakkinen is back in with the Lotus team. Here's Rick de Bruyne.
Well, Mika Hakkinen having a very difficult debut in his first Formula 1 race after his problems on the front straightaway. Now they just had to bring him in to change the steering wheel. Nothing else changed in the car, just a new steering wheel. Let's go down to John Bisignano.
One of the reasons these drivers are experiencing such a bumpy ride out there is the fact that the travel and suspension is absolutely minimal now. The tire suspension travel can only be about an inch on this entire Ferrari. It's like riding a skateboard. It's like riding a skateboard at about 160 miles an hour. A little bit of extra security, and the Ferrari people now also off to the garage. The gentleman who is responsible for the in-car cameras, they are very tired. This gentleman has been up all night long trying to get these cameras working perfectly for these very nice shots.
Well, then he's entitled to a short nap, although how he can take one in the noise environment of Phoenix, I will never know.
That's why he's wearing that headset.
Yeah, I've got a headset on too, and it's deafening me. Bob Barsha, David Hobbs, Rick de Bruyne, and John Bisignano with you at Phoenix, Arizona, in the Iceberg, United States Grand Prix. You're on board Jean Alesi's Ferrari, running in 5th position.
John Alesi leading with his head there, which you find so impressive.
Alesi has been passed by Riccardo Patrese for 4th place, so make your order on lap 17. Senna, Prost, Mansell, Patrese, Alesi, Berger, Piquet, Moreno, Stefano Modena, and Emanuele Pirro in the top 10.
Mika Hakkinen there, caught in that rather high-speed melee going down the back straight there, put his hand out there. Somebody else going slowly. Wasn't one of the Benettons, was it? It is one of the Benettons, isn't it? The yellow car.
Couldn't get a close look at it.
Sweeping through the streets, this long left-hander coming onto the main straight. Vital corner.
You can see the crowd pressing up against the fence. These Formula 1 cars are running right under their noses, about 10 feet below. That has to be one of the best seats in any Formula 1 house. There goes Jean Alesi underneath Aguri Suzuki and LaRousse. Looks like Suzuki wants to put up a little bit of a fight. Now here's one of the one of the Minardis with their new Ferrari V12 engines in the pits. This is Gianni Morbidelli, who used to be a Ferrari test driver. For the first time, the Ferrari factory is allowing their first-string engines to be used by another team, and it all goes back to a long friendship between Minardi and Ferrari.
That looks like the end of their day. They're unclipping the driver. Also, Michele Alboreto is parked in front of us in the Porsche engine footwork. There's Morbidelli getting out.
Meanwhile, Ayrton Senna having no problems with that brand new McLaren Honda V12.
Just put a lap there on Martin Brundle, who also has a new V12. I mean, that's a Yamaha engine, has done very little testing, and the testing they've done has proven to be somewhat unreliable. So we're led to believe, but this afternoon we'll see.
After the first round of practice, Alain Prost said, "I've been watching the McLarens, and they've obviously solved their biggest problem from last year, which was speed in the corners." There is the interval as Ayrton Senna goes out the bottom of your picture, followed by Martin Brundle. There is the second place, number 27 in red, of Alain Prost. We'll give you a look at the top 18 with 15 laps complete. Actually, 15 laps was several laps ago. We are now working lap number 19 on the racetrack. And the lead from Senna to Prost has now expanded to 9.27 seconds. He is slowly drawing away by a fraction of a second on every lap. A year ago, Alain Prost came to Phoenix and said, "I'm throwing this race away. My car is just not suited to this kind of a track. We need to get to the wide open circuits of Europe." This year, he says, "I have a much better car and a much better team. We expect to do well." Right now, as well as he's expecting to do, is second place.
And of course, more bad news for him was that he had observed the McLaren from behind during practice and qualifying, and was rather disturbed to see it look so good through the fast corners. There we see Nigel Mansell, the new FW14 Williams, Renault, a new engine, a new chassis. They also have that raised front wing. Not quite as pronounced as some of them.
Locked up the tires a little bit going into that corner. Meanwhile, we've got a report from Rick de Bruyne in the pits.
Emanuele Pirro came in his day gun. He coasted into the pits. What's wrong with the car?
Some transmission problems, we don't know yet, but some gears were jumping out and had to stop.
You have the Ferrari Ferrari engine for the first time. How was it running?
The engine is perfect. The engine was all right. Transmission was all right.
Pardon me, not Ferrari. The new engine was doing well?
Yeah, very well.
That's right, Rick. The new engine in that car is the John Judd-built V10 that Dallara is using exclusively this year. It's easy to get them mixed up.
And it certainly seemed to go extremely well in practice and qualifying for a new car and a new engine. Of course, that engine comes from Rugby England. Jack Brabham has an involvement with that company, and it certainly went extremely well before its initial shakedown runs. And so we're thinking that car combination could be very, very competitive as the year goes on.
Nigel Mansell, you got a good-looking profile there with a raised nose, which is now all the design rage in Formula 1. Nigel has nicknamed his car Dolphin, in part because of the high nose and in part because it has been porpoising down these bumpy straightaways. The Williams car is providing much more sparks than anybody else. See, the sparks right under the nose there.
Mansell coming under extreme pressure from his teammate, Patrese. I wonder what James Hunt will be saying about this.
James Hunt, the commentator for BBC coverage. Let's just say he is a tad nationalistic.
Well, he thought that Thierry Boutsen was absolutely useless and should never be in a Formula 1 car. And if Patrese could do as well as he could against Boutsen, what they wanted was a real driver like Nigel. Well, they got him in there now. Both of them gradually winding in Alain Prost in the Ferrari, too. This is going to be an interesting dust-up, this.
20 laps complete. Patrese takes a look under his teammate, but he won't attempt the pass there.
Nigel must be having some sort of a problem with the car. It could be the gearbox. One of the things that was going wrong this morning was it was missing gears or skipping gears, all of which sounds rather unpleasant to me.
And this battle between three cars running 2, 3, and 4 on the racetrack is about to overtake the lap cars of Martin Brundle and Gabriele Tarquini, the AGS. That could provide sparks.
Martin Brundle, of course, that car we saw in the pits earlier with that what looked like a totally broken rear suspension, but obviously what it was fixed. These three are having a hot and heavy dice here. And as you say, about to run up in this group of cars, just coming to this slow left-hander, or fastest left-hander, onto the main straight.
But they were going to get him. This is where they want to do it, on Washington Street. Nice and wide, lots of room to pass, at least for the first guy in line. All three of them will get underneath Tarquini in the AGS, the white car with the blue stripe. That team's in some financial trouble. We may not see them in 2 weeks in Brazil.
Alesi now coming under pressure from Berger.
Gerhard Berger in the second McLaren trying to move up. It is Senna by 10.5 seconds over Alain Prost, followed in close order by Mansell, Patrese, and Alesi, Berger, Piquet, Moreno, Modena, and Capelli. On the front stretch, Jefferson Street. Oh, Ricardo Patrese came under Nigel Mansell, and they both go straight on. The entire Williams team out of the action in one swell foop.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Well, of course, he got way offline, and he was away from the oil and rubber. And the trouble with these street circuits is they have no real groove down.
No, I guess I'm wrong. It looks as though perhaps both Williams cars did not go up. I think Mansell might have been able to make that corner, though I wasn't quite sure.
I think Mansell made it. It was only Patrese that went down the escape road, which, of course, has thrown him back into the clutches of the 28 car of Alesi.
There is Frank Williams, confined to a wheelchair since an automobile accident in 1986 in France. One of the great personalities among car owners in Formula 1. No doubt he is thinking what he's going to discuss with his drivers. Here's a look now. Patrese to the left of your screen. Tried to get under Nigel. Oh,
Nigel did a good save there.
Well, he almost turned into him.
Almost turned into him, but then having decided not to, pulled around and made a good save, and obviously did make it round the corner. Whereas Patrese had to do a very smart three-point turn there.
Well, the radio waves are no doubt crackling between the Williams pits and their drivers.
Now then, how badly did he flat spot those tires, of course? He's going to have to change them. If they're badly flat spotted, it'll have a lot of nasty vibration.
Well, there's the pit entrance, and he does not take it.
Didn't lose much time. If you look, there's Mansell in the bottom of the picture, who obviously did get around. Sorry, that's
Alesi, followed by Berger.
Up, of course.
Let's reset the order. It is Senna, Prost, Mansell, Alesi, Berger, Patrese now back in 6th position, followed by Nelson Piquet and Roberto Moreno. So they have plenty of time ahead of the Benetton cars for Patrese to get back on the track.
I'm somewhat surprised at that because they weren't all that far behind. He obviously did a very quick exit out of that little cul-de-sac.
There is Gerhard Berger.
sharp turn 5, short shift up to second to third. Then up to fifth, along here, back to fourth, around this little right-hand sweep.
Berger's been very outspoken this weekend. The FIA, the worldwide governing body of motorsport, has postponed new regulations governing the size of Formula 1 cockpits. They wanted them to make them bigger in order to accommodate larger drivers. They postponed that rule because the team said it would be too expensive to redesign next year's cars at this point. Gerhard Berger very upset about that. He's one of the taller drivers in Formula 1 at about 5'11". He says you're going to see nothing but jockey-sized drivers in the future. There is your leader, Ayrton Senna. No problem at all with the bumps right there on Jefferson Street.
I was just going to say, just look at the difference between the way that McLaren of his goes over those bumps and some of the other cars that we've been seeing, the Ferraris, of course, to be particular.
Senna set fast lap of the race back on lap 4, 1 minute 28.13 seconds. Of course, since we have a new race course this year, we've had changes to it, so all of the marks will be new course records. It is Senna by 14 seconds over Alain Prost in the USGP. We'll be back in Phoenix, Arizona in round 1 of the 1991 Formula 1 World Championship, the 43rd Grand Prix of the United States. Bob Barsha and David Hobbs with you. There is our leader, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, who took the lead at the first green light of the year and has led ever since, drawing slowly away from the field, now 15.2 seconds up on second place, Alain Prost. Americans in Formula 1 have produced 2 world champions over the years. Phil Hill back in 1961 with 5 poles and 2 victories, and of course Mario Andretti driving for Lotus in 1978. Phil Hill now celebrates the 30th anniversary of being the first American to win the Formula 1 World Championship, and we're privileged to have him with us in the booth. Phil, thanks very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
As you watch Ayrton Senna making his way around, simply throttling this field at this point, remind you of anybody you've seen before?
Yeah, it reminds me of Ayrton Senna.
I take it you've seen nobody else like him before then. What are your impressions of Senna?
I think he's pretty outstanding. I'm afraid that, you know, whatever opinions we might have had earlier on about it being some sort of fluke or something were untrue, that he's here to stay.
I think Ayrton Senna, I mean, my hero was Jimmy Clark, who always had the ability to set poles, fastest laps, and just go off like a rocket ship. But I do think he had a big technical advantage, even over what Senna's got. But Senna's just absolutely outstanding, seems to me.
Yeah, he's supreme.
We are watching the battle for 4th place, 28, the Ferrari of Jean Alesi, Gerhard Berger in the number 2, McLaren Honda, and the 6 of Riccardo Patrese. After that, off at the end of the front straightaway, Patrese running in 6th position. I've noticed you in the pit lane, Phil, and the Ferrari mechanics, even though none of them ever worked when you were driving for Ferrari, still seem to hold you with a certain amount of reverence. You've maintained a good relationship with the team over the years.
Yes, I have. Not for a spell right after I left, but in subsequent decades, yes.
We're watching the battle on the racetrack for 4th position.
Riccardo Patrese has wound that group in pretty successfully after that little off he had. Gerhard Berger now trying to get around Jean Alesi. Which, of course, is all playing to the advantage of Riccardo Patrese.
That was quite a little bit of excitement we had there a while back.
That when Patrese and Mansell nearly took each other out of the race.
Yeah, by the grace of God, Nigel just literally at the last second gave up and let Patrese through, and Patrese slid down the escape road. Otherwise, they'd have both been in the wall. Ooh, getting really close to the wall there.
They come off the turn, nose to tail. We'll see whether a move is about to be made. Gerhard seems to have his eye on the Ferrari, but here comes Riccardo Patrese at the back of your picture in number 6. Nope.
You can see there how good the McLaren is over that bump. Now it's right behind the Ferrari. And the Ferrari last year was tremendously good on bumpy circuits, and of course on fast corners as well, which obviously there aren't any fast corners here. But
Phil, I heard a story that you have driven the Benetton Formula 1 car in recent years. What were your impressions?
Let's see, did I drive the Benetton? No, I don't think I did.
Have you driven any of the other Formula 1 machinery?
I drove PK's championship Honda Williams at Suzuka for about a half a day. That was very exciting. I drove one of the last ground effects Renaults several years ago, and that was equally exciting.
Your impressions of how the Formula 1 machinery have changed over the years since your Ferrari back in '61?
Well, needless to say, everything happens a lot quicker. The forces that are on the driver are enormous compared to what we had to experience, even though when we were driving front engine cars, it felt like we were on the end of a string about to be cut. This is a different order altogether.
Yeah, the side loads that these cars generate, up to 4G is pretty mind-blowing, and these drivers have to be incredibly fit to withstand these races.
As we watch the battle continue between Alesi, Berger, and Patrese. And just out in front of them, there's the gap up to Nigel Mansell at the bottom of your screen in third position.
I think Riccardo Patrese, if he could just get around these two guys, would be off in hot pursuit of his teammate again. It looks to me like Patrese is probably the second fastest car on the track at the moment, behind Ayrton Senna.
I would feel the same, too. He's recovered from that previous thing remarkably well.
Extremely quickly, and he went very quickly all through the weekend. Right out of the box on Friday morning, Patrese was right there on the limit.
There's Berger right up on the gearbox now of the Ferrari.
As we say, don't like to put more pressure on the lad, but he has got a lot of pressure on him, and Michael Andretti is hovering around in the wings, waiting to just slip into that car like an old shoe.
If he can. A little side story here. Jean-Marie Boulest of the FIA, the overall worldwide governing body, had a fairly strident press conference here in Phoenix, in which he said that any drivers taking part in the IndyCar season opener in Surfers Paradise, Australia next weekend will be banned, will not be allowed to compete in Formula 1. Of course, that was directed right squarely at Michael Andretti. Phil Hill, your thoughts about the off-season sensationalism over this kart race in Surfers Paradise?
Well, they're personal, of course, but it sounds like a fair amount of silliness to have to make such extreme controls over things like that. I don't know. I just don't know what to think.
As you watch this battle unfold...
Silly is a pretty good word, I'd say. The only thing that reminds me of these cars, of the cars you drove, I saw so many pictures of you in the 1.5-litre rear-engine car, and those Ferraris used to run such incredible camber angles with those little narrow tyres, and since we've gone to the radial tyres in Formula 1, these guys too run some pretty extravagant camber angles on these wheels.
Not as much as we did, but
Not
still extravagant.
Yeah.
If you had to advise Riccardo Patrese at the caboose of this battle for 4th place, what would you advise him, Bill?
Don't ask me to advise him, please.
All right, Phil Hill joining us in the booth as we watch the action continue here on the streets of Phoenix. Once again, the McLaren moves up. I thought Berger was going to try the pass there.
I think he thought he was too. And the flag marshal certainly thought he was.
Yeah, blue flag for Alesi. Sure, he's going to pay attention to that. Yeah, I'm going to pull over and let him by for 4th. You bet.
Yep.
And now the Ferrari begins to draw away just a little bit, and the Williams of Riccardo Patrese begins to pull in. You are on board with our leader, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, now 17.5 seconds clear of the field in the United States Grand Prix. Phoenix at some 160 miles an hour, then braking hard for the first corner of the Iceberg United States Grand Prix. 30-year-old Ayrton Senna of Brazil has controlled this race from the start with 30 laps complete. He leads by some 18 laps. Don't forget, coming your way next Saturday at midnight Eastern Time, the Gold Coast Grand Prix, the controversial kart IndyCar season opener from Surfers Paradise, Australia. Bob Jenkins and the gang will be with you to bring you all of the early season action as the kart season opens in Australia. We are watching the opener of the 1991 Formula 1 World Championship, and Ayrton Senna is taking up right where he left off. The defending world champion is leading. Now here's a pass on the backstretch. We don't want you to miss anything.
That's Riccardo Patrese getting around Gerhard Berger.
Now why couldn't he do that when we had Phil Hill in the booth? Thanks very much to Phil, the 1961 world champion, for joining us on the 30th anniversary of his world championship.
So now they see there the gap between Patrese, number 6, and just in front of him going around the corner there is the 28 car of Alesi, and they're both leaving Gerhard Berger quite substantially.
Exactly. He's pulling away from the McLaren.
Berger must have some sort of a problem too.
Still lots of sparks from under the front wing of the Williams cars. Now let's go down to the pits to John Bisignano.
I think one thing that's very unusual here in Detroit at this stage in the race is that there's still 22 cars running at our last count. I think that's very unusual for a difficult course like this. If you get offline here, you hit something and you hit it hard. Also, we're not expecting a lot of pit action at this particular stage in the race. With cool temperatures here in Arizona, means that they're just not going to be using up the tires. Everyone, both the Pirelli and the Goodyear drivers went off on very soft compounds, but there's just not enough heat. There's not enough usage of those tires, hopefully at this stage where they're going to have to come in and stop. The only way they're going to have to use up the tires is on tire spin, accelerating out of the corners. You might be able to wear down a few of the rear tires in the later stages.
And they're not going to do it in Detroit, John. They're going to do it right here in Phoenix, but I can understand your confusion. This is the 8th site for the United States Grand Prix over the years. Riverside, California, Sebring, Florida, of course, Watkins Glen, Long Beach, Las Vegas, Detroit, Dallas, and now here in Phoenix.
Riccardo Patrese, incidentally, has got the fastest lap of the race under his belt now. Took that off Ayrton Senna. But, as John has said, the only thing these guys have really got to watch out for on their tyres here is wheel spin, coming off, of course, the plethora of tight second gear corners. And I think that is where Senna, for instance, is so incredibly good at husbanding things like his tyres. Patrese now wearing down John Alesi. Was leading him at one stage, slid off down the road, let Alesi by.
Patrese now holds fast lap in the race on lap 24, 127.450. Now there is the Tyrrell of Satoru Nakajima of Japan. And we talked about it earlier, that unique anhedral nose on the car. The nose raised up, the wing drops low, rather like a walrus effect. And John Bizignano took a look at this new design trend in Formula 1 and has more now as we go down to the pit road before the race.
Once again in 1991, the officials of Formula 1 are trying to slow the cars down. They're trying to do this by reducing the size of both the front and the rear wings. By reducing the size, you reduce downforce, which of course lowers cornering speeds and therefore increases lap times. But the designers, somehow they always squeeze more speed out of these cars. They're trying to get more downforce or equal downforce from a smaller surface. Like on the Tyrrell here, the Corsair type wing is the new wave of development. The designers think they can go just as fast with a much smaller wing area.
The Corsair wing, of course, refers to the old World War II fighter that looked like somebody had shut the door on it before it got out of the hangar.
There you see Satoru Nakajima locking him up at the end of the straight, and he too takes down to the escape road. And we'll have to do a bit of a spin turn there. Is that Mauricio Guzman?
No, that's the Jordan. That's Jordan Cascio right there.
Yes, it is.
And then Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi, and here is Satoru Nakajima back on track.
And about to be lapped by Mr. Ayrton Senna from Brazil.
That's the race leader coming up from behind. Let's take another look at what happened to Satoru Nakajima.
Hits the bump at the end of the straight. Boom, boom, boom. Locks up the front, left front. Lifts off to try and get it round, to get some steering way again. Won't have it. And goes on down the escape road.
Meanwhile, leader Ayrton Senna has now put the Tyrrell a lap down. So our order at this point, this man, Ayrton Senna, by 21.1 seconds over Alain Prost. I just can't get over the way he is simply motoring away from the Ferraris. Nigel Mansell in the Williams runs third, followed by Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, Riccardo Patrese, Gerhard Berger, Nelson Piquet, Roberto Moreno, as you take a look right there at the reigning world champion. Stefano Modena is 9th, Ivan Capelli is 10th, and over a minute in arrears. 11th, Satoru Nakajima, who has now been put a lap down, followed by, Nakajima is not in 11th, Bertrand Gachot is, followed by Pierluigi Martini, then Nakajima, running in 13th, followed by Terry Boutsen, Maurizio Guglielmin, Nicola Larini, Aguri Suzuki, and Mark Blundell.
If you look at Senna from outside there, we had a nice shot of him from above as he turns into that double left-hander. Incredible economy of movement. You just don't see him soaring away at the steering wheel. How he controls the car, how he sends the message to the car, and how the car sends the messages to him, I'm just not quite sure. I mean, he seems to be in a bit of a world of his own. He just looks so smooth all the time, at the same time, so fast.
And what makes it even more miraculous is that Ayrton Senna did very little driving over the winter. In fact, he drove the car not at all from the final event of the year in Australia back in the beginning of November until a test session in Estoril, Portugal about a week and a half ago.
And it certainly seems to have paid off. We interviewed him the other day, and he said that he felt 100% better mentally and physically than last year. Last year, of course, he'd had a terribly rancorous winter, arguing with Bisa. There you see some statistics on the Honda Marlboro McLaren. Comes from Woking in Surrey, not Woking, as somebody saw it earlier on.
McLaren Honda MP46 refers. Oh, we've got an incident, and that's right at the pit entrance.
2 cars there.
Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus is the white car, and it's one of the Brabhams. Looks like Mark Blundell in the yellow helmet to the right. Hard into the wall.
Mark Blundell's first ever Formula 1 start.
And Hakkinen's as well. Not a joyful meeting. Let's see. Well, looks like Hakkinen is underway again. Boy, is he having an eventful day. There's Hakkinen just going out the right of your screen. Blundell spun on his own.
Blundell already had spun, yes. So Hakkinen didn't. In fact, again, Hakkinen seems to have got away here scot-free because we already saw that tremendous incident earlier on which didn't do anything to him. Now they're going to have to do something to that car. They're going to try and lift it out of the way.
A matched pair of spins, and that was a very dangerous part of the racetrack. Good thing nobody was coming up behind. There is Mark Blundell, a late addition to the Brabham team. Did a lot of sports car racing with the Nissan in Group C World Championship sports car racing last year.
With a fairly meteoric rise to the top. Did Formula Ford 1600, won that. Did Formula Ford 2000, won that. Went to Formula 3, didn't like that. Went to Formula 3000, did well. There we see Patrese gradually winding away. That's the number 6 car there. Gradually winding into the Ferrari of number 28 of John Alesi, pulling away from Gerhard Berger in the second McLaren Honda. But he is definitely catching Alesi up, but it's a very slow process, as you can see. And of course, they don't have all day to do it.
Now Nigel Mansell has been slowing down. There goes one of the Mazda cars, Nelson Piquet. Here comes Roberto Moreno. Here comes the number 4. And Mansell is out of his car. This is on the front straightaway. He's going to try to push the car back toward that opening in the fence, just beyond the pit exit.
And nobody coming to help him. That's great.
That's exactly where he parked one of his cars during
Come
practice.
on, you dingbats, get out there and give him a hand.
Formula 1 fans recall Nigel Mansell pushing his Lotus in Dallas in 100-degree heat a few years back. Now he will try to push his Williams off the track. And no help at all. Remarkable. Let's take another look at an incident on the backstretch and see if we can tell. At the back of your screen, his hand goes up, and the blue and yellow car nearly gets tagged by Alesi with Patrese in close pursuit.
Now that played into Patrese's hands. Patrese goes down the inside now. It's not going to work.
And then Mansell came right back up to speed. I'm wondering if there's a problem with the gearbox.
Must be the gearbox. It obviously stayed in the wrong gear at that particular point, causing him to put his hand up to warn the others. But so, a disappointed Nigel Mansell.
Keep in mind that they're using a new semi-automatic gearbox that Mansell was very outspoken about when he was with the Ferrari team. He had no confidence in the technology whatsoever. Now he signs for a great deal of money with the Williams team, and they present him with another semi-automatic.
But he did say that he would, use it until it was proven that it wasn't going to be the way to go. They have the ordinary 5-speed to fall back on. There we see Ayrton Senna just in front of Bertrand Gachot in the new 7-Up Jordan. What a team that is. There's Nigel Mansell walking back to the pits, shouting at various people, looking hot, waving to the crowd. One of the most favoured of all people. Everybody you talk to wants Nigel Mansell to win the championship.
We watch our race leader, Nigel.
Everybody except this bloke.
Nigel has a fan at Buckingham Palace. He picked up an OBE, member of the Order of the British Empire.
Other blood shepherd, some people call it.
Oh, and Berger's off.
Oh dear, Gerhard's day gets worse and worse. Now then, has he got a problem? Because as you have said, this is an all-new car and a new engine, although the V12 has had a fair bit of testing mileage. Neither of these two guys were terribly high on it at that press conference the other day.
No, in fact, both Berger and Senna said that the car needs a lot of work. We can't expect too much of it in the early going. It'll take a lot of improvement. Gerhard Berger getting the worst of it here. His teammate is right up front, although an incident like this has to raise a question mark about the ability of Ayrton Senna's car to go to the distance.
Yep, he's obviously got some sort of a problem.
Lost drive also.
Don't see any smoke. Don't see any fluid. Just seems to have completely lost drive. Somewhere could have broken the drive shaft or anything.
There is Gerhard Berger.
Not a happy man. He may have had gearbox troubles. We don't know. He obviously was just slightly off the pace.
Rick de Bruyne has caught up with Nigel Mansell in the pit lane.
Nigel Mansell, what went wrong with the car today?
I'm afraid the gearbox let go.
You'd had problems during yesterday, the warm-up this morning. Was there problems during the race, or did it suddenly go?
We've had problems all weekend, but that's the best the car's gone, but we've still got a problem with changing gear.
Nigel Mansell out of the race.
A lot of frustration boiling up in Nigel Mansell.
This is not what he wanted it. This time, well, soon after the beginning of last year, he swore that he was going to retire at the British Grand Prix. He said, that's it, I give up, I retire, I quit. He was prevailed upon by Frank Williams, who was very persuasive and had a large pot of gold. And Frank wanted to come back, but he also wanted to be the absolute undisputed #1 in the team, and Frank gave him everything he wanted.
You're riding with Ayrton Senna, the overall leader in the first round of the 1991 Formula 1 World Championship, the U.S. Grand Prix. Stay with us. Virgin Atlantic Airways Lightship. You see the red and white McLaren of our overall race leader, Ayrton Senna. Gives you a pretty good perspective of just how quickly this car accelerates with Honda V12 power. Rocketing along the streets of Phoenix, rocketing that is. He leads by 21 seconds over Alain Prost. That lead has stabilized somewhat, which may be an indication of the new Ayrton Senna that we saw last year, I believe at Spa-Francorchamps, the Grand Prix of Belgium. He knows now that he needs to win only by the length of a car. He doesn't need to dominate everybody in the field. He doesn't need to beat them by a lap. All he needs to do is win. And a win today would tie him for second on the all-time list with three-time former world champion Jackie Stewart.
With 27 wins, and of course, Alain Prost has 44 wins, so he's got a long way to go to catch up with Alain Prost, but the way he's going, it's certainly not impossible, because he is only 30, Prost is 36. I mean, he could race Formula 1 for another 7 or 8 years yet, easily. Depends if the desire and the motivation's there. At the moment, it seems to be. Like we were saying earlier, he was just so happy this weekend compared to his normal self. He reckons that mentally, that long layoff that you were talking about seems to have really worked for him. Like most people have to practice and practice to stay sharp. There he's throwing off another one of those tear-off strips. Not that he's having much oil from any traffic, no traffic in front of him.
There is artist Bill Patterson at work. You're familiar with Bill's work. He does our helmet profiles and our starting grids here on ESPN. Although we can't get a very good look at those helmets from there, he does get a good perspective on our overall race leader, Ayrton Senna. With 40 laps complete, he leads by 23.8 seconds. He has now beaten Riccardo Patrese for fast lap.
Well, of course, that's a typical Senna trait. He'll wait till the car's lost all its fuel. He doesn't want to go hammering it around when it's got a lot of fuel in to do a fast lap, because that might endanger his tyre wear. So he's going to wait till it's light before he starts getting back fastest laps.
Now this is the battle for third place. Alesi in the red Ferrari, Riccardo Patrese in the blue and yellow Williams, and just ahead of them, past Mika Hakkinen there in the Lotus, is Alain Prost running in second place.
These guys have made up all sorts of ground on Alain Prost. They're only 2 seconds behind him now.
There is one of the new cars in 1991, and here's John with more.
The Lambo car is in the pits with Florini. They had a good pit stop going until that right rear is all seized up. The Italians are banging on it. They're trying to get this car back into the race. Florini is on Goodyear tires. I can see the fronts and the rears. They don't look particularly abused. Absolutely no blisters whatsoever, but this is a very long stop and very disappointing for the Italians and the Italian team. On the side of the car, you can see a yellow ribbon and American flag, a little bit of extra spirit here in Phoenix.
Well, the spirit's probably not very good. As I mentioned, it's one of the new teams in the sport. The car has now been shut off. He's overheating. Oh, he's going to go out. He has not shut it off. I'll be darned.
It sounded like it shut it off, but it's definitely starting to spew out some steam there. Here we see.
Now we've got a battle. Patrese looking for that third place around Jean Alesi.
And there, just going out of the picture, is Alain Prost, the team leader for Ferrari. Just out of there they are, in line stern.
Jean Alesi, of Sicilian parents, grew up in France, so both the Italians and the French claim him. The Italians call him Alesi, and the French, Alesi.
Rounding out the top 6, of course, is Nelson Piquet and Roberto Marino in the Benetton.
Once again, here's John in the pit. Oh.
Well, Bobby, I have to point out that the Italians claim him when he's doing well. Of course, when he's not doing well, the Italians say that he's French, and vice versa. And right now, Ferrari is setting up for a pit stop. We'll let you know who's coming in as soon as they arrive.
We're approaching halfway in this 82-lap race. There's Terry Boutsen, who'll be climbing out of the Ligier. That team using Lamborghini V12 power this year for just 1 year, and then they're going to pick up the French Renault engines.
Poor old Thierry Boots, and I fear is in for not a great year. They're looking for the Renault V10 for next year, but they're going to have to go through a rather unpleasant year this year, I think.
Action in the pits. Here's Rick DeBrule.
Pit, Ivan Capelli has just come in with the Leighton House team. He had shut the engine off before, coasted in. There is smoke coming out the back of the engine. The mechanics are going ahead and they are starting to work on it, but it seems doubtful that he'll be back out for any more racing.
Well, the Leighton House team has been in the news this weekend. A bizarre occurrence on Friday night. When the team showed up on Saturday morning, they discovered that someone had committed very, very sophisticated sabotage on their race cars. They had reached up behind the dashboard and cut brake lines and oil temperature sensor lines, and they had also pulled some of the ignition wiring loops off the car. The most bizarre occurrence I can remember in Formula 1, and they have no idea who did it. Nevertheless, them and their new Ilmor V10 engines, Ilmor, of course, the people who make Chevy's all-conquering IndyCar V8, now out of the battle. As the action continues, we'll return to Phoenix. In the red and white #1, emblematic of the world champion. We may have a Ferrari pit stop coming up. There you see the crew standing with tires and jacks at the ready. We are just at the halfway mark in this 82-lap race, just past halfway, and here comes one of the Ferraris into the pit. Let's get down to
John Alesi has arrived in the Ferrari pits. Everything going very smoothly. Well, tire change. That was one of the best stuff I've seen not only this year, but last year. The Ferrari boys acting perfectly.
Boy, I guess nowhere do you see, well, watch out for Nigel's car there, John. Nowhere do you see pit stops like Formula 1. 16 men descend on the race car, rip off the old tires, put the new ones on. It takes about 6 seconds if you're a world-class pit crew. Now let's see what happened to John Alesi. Ricardo Patrese, under braking, went right by him. Alesi's tires must just be used up.
Well, Alesi probably tried to go a little bit too hard too soon when he was full of fuel. And we'll only know, has John got some more information for us on that?
Alesi's front tires were very much used up, Bob. The right-hand side of them were totally scrubbed out. We cannot show them to you. Unfortunately, Goodyear has grabbed them and put them way in the back of the garage. But those front tires were totally rooted, Nate.
Well, now that's interesting because the opinion was that the front tires were going to be okay. And even out the center, looking just a little bit twitchy there as he came out of the turn 1.
Exactly. He came off that turn, pitched the car sideways. We may see a pit stop for our race leader. Although at this point, working lap number 45 of 82, he has enormous lead over second place. 27.5 seconds over this man, the number 27 of Alain Prost. We may have a lot of pit stops in our future.
Which was certainly not scheduled, or as you would say it. So, Ricardo Patrese working his way through this field, hoping against hope that he won't have the same gremlins go wrong with his gearbox that went wrong with his teammate Nigel Mansell, as he whittles away at Alain Prost for second spot.
Prost going very slow off that corner, no acceleration at all. What if he's not going to mechanical?
He may be looking out for his tires as well.
Here's a team profile on Ferrari. From Modena, Italy, the only team in Formula 1 that builds their entire car and engine from the ground up. Of course, they get their rubber from Goodyear. In fact, they've signed a new contract with Ferrari this year. There were a lot of rumors that Pirelli wanted to land Ferrari. Of course, being a native Italian team, you can't get much better than Ferrari, but they are back in harness with Goodyear again this year.
Well, it certainly wasn't a rumor that they wanted to be with him. They really did want to be with him, and they had a secret test last summer that nobody will tell you anything about, but they did test some Pirellis at one stage.
Well, actually, we did ask them about it, and they denied it, and then came back this year and said, oh, yeah, by the way, we did. There is Ricardo Patrese slowly closing in on Alain Prost for second place. No man in Formula 1 other than Patrese has more than 200 starts. Patrese now working on 209. His first race was in 1977 when Alain Prost was back in Formula 3 and Ayrton Senna was driving racing karts back in Brazil.
Getting mixed up in some traffic there. That was Alboreto in the footwork for Porsche. Not having a good day. He's made at least one pit stop. Patrese now really getting tucked under the back wing of Alain Prost. They've got 2 more corners here. Then there's a short, sharp straight down to that long turn 5, the double apex turn 5.
Traffic ahead of them, too.
Now then, he's going to make a good shot through here. He's pretty close. Yep, it looks like they're getting ready for Alan Prost to come in. Tyres with their warmers on there. Get the tyres up to racing temperature before they go on the track.
Get your stopwatches out. If he gets a stop anywhere close to what Jean Alesi had, Alan Prost will be something to behold. And it'll be interesting to see how much faster he gets with new rubber on.
They're looking in the mirror there. First ball to his left, then to his right. Patrese goes down the inside. No, not going to do it this time. Coming to the last section of the track here. 4 more corners to go. It certainly looks as if Alan Prost, the tyre blankets are off. He must be going to come in this lap.
Those blankets are used to heat the tires to about 170 degrees or so. Operating temperatures got very wide. John Bizignano is waiting for Alain Prost.
We are in Alain Prost's pit, and he comes in and he jerked the car coming into the pit like he had the wrong gear. I hope he has this thing in first gear. A little bit of trouble with the right rear. They're spraying some silicone on that right rear. Now there's a lot of trouble with the right rear. That nut has expanded. It's very hot. Smoke pouring off the brake. He had to hit first gear when the car was still on the stands. 15.8 seconds. That's a disaster in Formula 1. The boys on that right rear are definitely going to be getting a little practice. We'll find out what went wrong.
Oh, Prost pulling out in front of these cars. He does not want to get those lap cars between him.
There's Michele Alboreto getting out of the new Porsche in the footwork car. Let's get back down to the pits.
Well, that's Michele Alboreto did get out of the car. A few moments ago, he came ripping up pit lane, intending to make a stop for tires, and went right by his crew. He literally just waved at him as he went by. Apparently, the brakes are gone. He went out, turned another lap. The crew was ready to change tires, but when he came in, he simply gave up and got out.
Well, here is our leader going around Martin Brundle. Right now. Excuse me, David.
I was going to say only just Martin Brundle not actually sort of giving up there without a bit of a struggle.
Watch as the McLaren draws away from the Brabham with a new Yamaha V12 behind the neck of Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell. Senna is working lap number 48 of 82. Thus far, that brand new Honda V12 seems to be working just fine. There is no one within half a minute of Ayrton Senna. Plenty of time to stop and get back out if he needs tires.
Just full 31.5 second lead now over Riccardo Patrese, who will be causing joy in the Williams camp by pulling that car up to second place. Brand new car, brand new Renault engine, pretty good debut. They also have had absolutely minimal running on that car. They ran it at Silverstone like 2 weeks ago and it was pouring with rain. And in fact, Nigel had a bit of an off and got it stuck in the mud. And then they took it down to Paul Ricard and did a little more testing, but they haven't done much in that car, showing very well so far. Obviously, that unreliability problem with the gearbox, but that's the sort of thing I would expect.
Senna is our leader. More for...
Want a great deal on a great truck?
Ayrton Senna is our leader, and I believe he has just made a turn into the McLaren pits. The leader is in with about a 31-second time advantage over Riccardo Patrese. Plenty of time if there are no problems. The McLaren team goes to work.
As usual, a smooth stop there and a very quick stop for Senna. He's got a long way to go down the pit road here. They chose to pit right at the beginning. Drives past everybody, out of the pits, just misses Nigel Mansell's car that's poking out the wall there. Takes a line down the middle of the road, doesn't want to get that rolled up rubber onto his new tyres as he leaves the pit.
And it'll be interesting to see just how fast he goes now that he has new rubber on the car. But he came in with a big lead, a good quick pit stop from the McLaren team, and he's back out on the racetrack in good shape, no loss of position. He remains the leader. On the racetrack, Ayrton Senna has led from the beginning. He has been in and out for tires with no problems whatsoever. A remarkable effort in the first run for this race car and its brand new Honda engine, although they have been testing the new Honda V12 since last year. Still, there is nothing like race conditions.
This is a bit of a good news, bad news day. The bad news is that, for everybody else, is that they reckon this engine's not very good yet because they've got a long way to go to get this package right, was the words that he used the other day. Well, if this is not right, it's not very good news for the rest of them.
Pretty close, isn't it? Let's take a look at our running order. It is Senna over Patrese, followed by Nelson Piquet, Roberto Moreno, Stefano Modena, Jean Alesi in the Ferrari now in 6th, followed by Alain Prost after his tire stop in 7th. Satoru Nakajima in the Tyrrell is 8th and 1 lap down. 7 cars remain on the lead lap. Bertrand Gachot is 9th in the debut of the new Jordan car, followed by Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi with the Ferrari V12 engine. Those are your top 10. A gap 17.1 seconds from first to second place.
Into that bumpy turn 1 again, which doesn't look too bumpy to Senna.
A look from high overhead in a Virgin Atlantic Airways lightship. Senna is your leader on his way to a possible 27th career Formula 1 victory. Stay with us. 5 cars have crashed on the backside on the Washington Street side of this racetrack. To the right of your screen, the number 6 there is the Cannon Williams Renault of Riccardo Patrese, who was running second. To the left is Roberto Moreno, who just crossing the racetrack right there. Here comes his teammate, Nelson Piquet, who now moves up into second spot behind our leader, Ayrton Senna. Let's take a look at what happened. Patrese hit the wall first, and then... oh! Moreno couldn't make the corner and drove right across his bows. Patrese says, I am out of here. Then it looks like either Alesi or Prost and the Ferrari hit the debris. Patrese makes a quick exit. That is the same part of the racetrack where Jean Alesi ended yesterday's final round of qualifying with a crash in just that spot.
That is the only corner that the drivers have made some comments about. It's blind, it's difficult to spot, and it does tighten up on exit. I think the car's probably in gear, girls.
Plenty of cleanup to be done there, but the race continues. There is fluid on the racetrack. This is going to be a dangerous moment. We'll fill you in on what happens when we return to the U.S. Grand Prix at Phoenix. Grand Prix over Nelson Piquet, who just moved up after an accident suffered by Riccardo Patrese and his Benetton teammate Roberto Moreno. Jean Alesi moves up to 3rd. Stefano Modena runs 4th in the Tyrrell, and 5th is Alain Prost after a tire stop in his Ferrari.
Well, of course, all 3 of our main protagonists, this guy here, Ayrton Senna, Jean Alesi and Alain Prost, have all stopped for tires. It affected Senna least of all. He had a very quick stop. He had over a 30-second lead and pulled out, never losing his lead on the track. Since then, of course, we've had this rather drastic accident involving poor old Patrese, who was going so well and was subsequently run into.
There is the car, still sitting on the track. They can't get it moved.
I think it's jammed in gear.
Ironically, Ayrton Senna had a lead of 31 seconds when he came in for his tire stop. He came out only 17 seconds ahead of the car right there, the number 6 of Riccardo Patrese. But since that crash, the man who now moves up into second is Nelson Piquet, and Senna's lead once again, 31 seconds. It is 2 seconds back to Jean Alesi, and then 6 seconds behind Alesi back to Modena. Now, we've been watching drivers adjusting their vision, cleaning off their visors by using tear-offs. John has more on that from the pits.
Bob, we actually have the visor that Senna took off when he came in for that very quick pit stop, and it is the most filthy visor I've ever seen in my life. It's totally covered with oil, a lot of tire rubber on it. I have no idea how he saw his way around the track. The only reason he would wear a visor this long until it got to this state is if he didn't have enough. But when he went out on the track, he didn't have enough to where he thought he had to hold on to this one for a very long time. The job he's doing out there before he came into the pits, he was half blind.
Good grief, I've never seen a tear-off or a visor like that. Looks like it's been dragged through the pits. Here's Alesi about to get around.
That's Prost in 5th, coming up on the 4th place car of Stefano Modena.
Now, Stefano Modena's not going to give up without a bit of a fight, because this is for a real place. Modena, of course, still on his original race tires. Prost on new tires.
When was the last time we saw a battle for position in the top 5 between a Ferrari and the Tyrrell?
Well, hopefully it's something we're going to see more of. The Tyrrell now having the Honda V10 engine, and they have a whole group of guys from Honda looking after that engine. It's not just some throwaway deal. And this could turn out to be a very, very potent combination as the year progresses. Coming off that corner, in fact, extremely well. Last year, the Tyrrell was reckoned to be one of the better handling cars, and by putting the Honda engine in, it shouldn't significantly make it any worse. This is the crash site. They're just coming up here. Everybody picking their way through there now with a bit of care. Let's hope that nobody picks up any debris and cuts the tire down.
The car still sits there. Last year, the Ferrari was thought to be one of the best handling cars in Formula 1. Tyrrell able to hold it at bay.
I'm really surprised they don't have a crane down that crash site to lift those cars out of the way.
Well, Moreno has already hit it and is out of the race. Let's hope no one else does as the battle here continues.
Well, of course, it's a bit different now because they all know it's there. Now then, how good is the Honda Tyrrell around this long corner? Because it's a critical corner. Comes off there, looks like it comes off pretty well. The Ferrari certainly seems to have a little bit more power, but Prost, of course, using that slipstream. The old NASCAR runners will be used to that. He's not actually riding it, no?
No. Not exactly a diving passing move there.
He nearly lost his nose. He nearly lost his nose.
Now let's go aboard with now our second place car. Jean Alesi has taken over second place, coming up on the crash site. There you see the cars, and watch the debris. Right in front of him there is one of the wings.
Ooh, and he runs right over it. Now, of course, they are carbon fiber. It would probably crush as the tyre ran over it, but there will be rivet holes and threaded pieces in there which could easily cut a tyre.
Right through that same part of the racetrack, Jean Alesi. Everything looks to be all right now in that Ferrari running in second position. And we'll watch the gap back to Nelson Piquet, formerly in second place. There he is, now in third, going out the bottom of your picture. And look for the battle for fourth. There is number 4, Stefano Modena. And Alain Prost, no real threat right now, it would appear.
Well, Prost is going to take his time. I mean, I'm sure he's sure that he can pick off Stefano Modena, but it's in Stefano Modena's chance, as you said earlier, to shine this year. He's got the equipment now. They still haven't got the budget that people like Ferrari and McLaren have got. But they are getting there. They picked up some more sponsorship this weekend again, and it's going to be a fairly strong and potent team.
No question about it. Ken Tyrrell, who drove with Jackie Stewart to a pair of world championships, may be back. Another of our wandering artists, Steve Boyd, working in the pits here at Phoenix. We'll be back in just a moment. Phoenix, Arizona, front straightaway at the United States Grand Prix. The number 4 Tyrrell of Stefano Modena coming under attack from Alain Prost, and the Ferrari takes him at the first corner.
A pretty clean pass there, but really Prost won that little skirmish coming off the last turn onto Jefferson Street, came off with more speed, carried that speed right down and enabled him to outbrake Modena into turn 1.
Now we'll see if the Ferrari can pull away from the Tyrrell V12 against V10. Alain Prost now leading the Tyrrell as the battle continues. This pair running about 45 seconds down to the overall leader, Ayrton Senna. Apparently Alain Prost's car working a little better than we thought of a few moments ago. Now we've got waving yellow flags, no doubt, for the crash site just around this corner where Roberto Moreno and Riccardo Patrese totaled their race cars. There they are. Moreno's car has been pushed now. It still sits there to the left of your screen. Patrase's car has been twisted a bit sideways to give these cars still racing a little bit more room. Stefano Modena. There is your overall race leader, the number 1 of the current world champion, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, a 2-time world champ, who has already stopped for tires. Reaches down for the gear lever there right in the middle of the turn. That's inconvenient.
Well, he does that short shift there, and he's coming up on the crash site, so we'll be able to see that from inside the car as he comes around this blind left hand. Of course, this is what happened to poor old Roberto Moreno. To his absolute horror, the car of Patrese was further out on the road than that. Going down the back straight here at Washington Street, about 180, hard on the brakes. You can see how difficult these corners are to see. This is really what the driver sees. It's just a slot in the wall that you've got to aim for. They're very difficult to pick out. Unlike a road course like the Watkins Glen or an Elkhart Lake, where you can actually see across the corner, you can line the corner up. Here you just aim for the gap in the concrete.
13 cars now out of the race of the 26 that started. Working lap number 58. Senna with a gap of some 38 seconds over the second place Ferrari of Jean Alesi of France. Nelson Piquet runs 5 seconds further back, followed by Alain Prost, 7 seconds behind Piquet. Stefano Modena 1 second behind Prost.
What's happening here? Oh, it's the Jordan. He's going slowly in the middle of the road, just past the crash site. Mika Hakkinen there in the number 11 car.
There is Jordan in the green car. Let's take another look at what happened. There's Jordan just coming off the corner. Ooh, got very much sideways. He is sideways all the way around.
Sheep creep. That what?
Oh yeah, fine. Shake your fist now, Jean.
Oh, now he pulls out in front of the third place car.
Piquet.
Boy, he's going to be popular afterwards among the drivers, I tell you. Well, of course, the spin, he couldn't help that, but he could certainly help pulling off. Now, that was very, very close for Alain Prost. very close.
Bertrand Gachot was running 7th on the racetrack. There is your leader, Ayrton Senna. We saw that horribly stained visor of his a little while ago. There is Gachot now in the pits. The neatly attired Eddie Jordan racing team from Ireland, very proud of their green colors, which dovetail nicely with those of their new sponsor. Familiar soft drink in the United States. Need to work on their pit stops a little bit, I'd say.
I'm amazed they haven't pulled that car of Nigel's further off the road there, too. There behind him is the Modena Lamborghini engine car. And here's our leader coming up to lap them again. Be careful going around Bertrand.
There's the second place car. Jean Alesi almost taken out moments ago in that spin by Bertrand Gachot. 26 years of age, engaged to be married. Young Jean Alesi from Avignon, France. There is the third place car of Nelson Piquet, as you saw the second place car of Alesi just on the screen.
Now Piquet, of course, is on the Pirelli tyres. That's the biggest change that the Benetton people, the Benetton Ford made last year was they went to Pirelli tyres. They're working very closely with the Pirelli engineers to design their new car, the 191, which will appear in Imola, around the tyre. They're trying to make the tyre and the car combination work together well.
There in the background, you see the lapped car, the Minardi of Pierluigi Martini, and just behind him, the fourth place Ferrari, number 27, just passing underneath Martini. That is Alain Prost. Prost trying to close in on Piquet. And there is the number 4, the Tyrrell of Stefano Modena, running in 5th position.
Prost is definitely pulling away from Modena. A little bit surprised that Modena and the Tyrrell aren't going just a fraction quicker than they are, actually.
The final car on the lead lap is Stefano Modena, son of the Lion for his father Leo, back in Modena, not far from the Ferrari factory. Ayrton Senna, a dominating leader in Phoenix. Back to Phoenix, Arizona, the Valley of the Sun, where the opening round continues in the 1991 Formula 1 World Driving Championship. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Iceberg United States Grand Prix is brought to you by Suzuki Motorcycles and ATVs. Suzuki, the ride you've been waiting for. And by Monroe Shocks and Struts. Monroe, your safety could depend on it. There are new points in place in Formula 1 this year. Should Ayrton Senna win, he will pick up 10 points instead of the 9 that have been in place for decades in Formula 1. 2nd through 6th will score as they did last year, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And perhaps the most important difference of all 16 races and their scores will count this year. Last year, it was the best 11 performances out of 16. This year, all 16 races will count. Let's get down to the pits now and John Visignano.
Roberto Moreno, you had an excellent USA Grand Prix going, and then you and Patrese came together. What happened?
We didn't come together. He spun, and he was stopped in the middle of the circuit in a blind corner. So I went over his front nose, and that's the end of the race for me.
Is there any way that you could have seen the car? Is that a problem with the track here in Phoenix? Would you like to see something change because of that?
It's very difficult to change. It's very good to change.
Okay, they can hear you.
It's very difficult to change a circuit like this. It's just a blind corner. It was just one of those things. He spun in the middle of the circuit. He couldn't get out. So I came here and I went straight to his front nose.
Roberto, I'm sure you're looking forward to Brazil. We're sorry you're out of the race here in Phoenix.
Thank you.
Your leader is Ayrton Senna, working lap number 63 of 82. Let's take one more look at what Roberto Moreno was just talking about. There is Patrese, who has already spun. A couple of cars have gone by, but Moreno took the corner wide and could not help it.
It was just one of those things, we don't know what sort of flag warnings he was getting, probably pretty good. But even so, you know, you never quite know just how bad it's going to be. And, of course, he was stuck well out in the road.
There is Nelson Piquet in the remaining Benetton car in the field, and just behind him, the 27 Ferrari in red of Alain Prost, trying to get around that Tyrrell.
That's the Tyrrell of Nakajima. Stefano Modena's teammate Nakajima is running fairly well down, but with that Honda power, of course, it's up. He won't be difficult to pass at all. Extremely easy to pass.
Third and fourth are Piquet and Prost. Prost now with a clear shot at Piquet. A pair of three-time world champions at work on the streets here at Phoenix. Ooh, somebody in the back of the picture there.
Somebody back there smoking badly at the top end of the straight. Nelson Piquet on Pirelli, and of course Alain Prost on Goodyear, new Goodyears, having stopped with his teammate to change tires.
And the Pirelli cars, or at least particularly the Pirelli car of Nelson Piquet, has not stopped yet, while most of the leading Goodyear runners have done so.
They may have been running on a slightly harder compound. Of course, the two Tyrrell Hondas are also on the Pirelli rubber too.
Of course, in addition to tires, fuel is a consideration throughout Formula 1 racing. Here's Rick DeBrule with a fuel story from the pits.
Well, especially you were talking about the fact that Honda's out there now with a V12 engine. One of the things a V12 engine does is it eats gasoline a lot quicker than a regular V8. For example, in the Benetton pit, they will have 200 liters of fuel. The McLaren will carry 220. That's the equivalent of at least two of these, possibly three. The result, first, you have to design that into the car. Second, you have to account for the weight of that. It's extra weight, and that's something the designers have to work around to try and get that car to go as fast as a car that only has 8 cylinders.
Whoop, there is our smoker. Speaking of fuel, we got a little bit of a fire, and a very eventful first Formula 1 race for Mika Hakkinen comes to a conclusion. Here's a look at what happened to him on the front side.
Bad haze of smoke there coming out of the engine. Engine obviously on the blink, on the way off. That is the Judd V8, and there we see the engine erupting in a cloud of smoke and oil. That will put more oil on the racetrack, give these drivers yet something else to think about. This is coming into that turn 5 and 6 complex.
Interestingly, both of the Lotus cars, Julian Bailey, his teammate who did not make the race, suffered a similar engine fire, an oil fire on Friday practice. Now Mika Hakkinen, who has spun several times, has finally burned his car out of the race.
Well, he certainly had a pretty good baptism of Formula 1 racing there. You can see just how young he is, only just 22 a few months ago. Very successful, a bit of a protege of Keke Rosberg of Finland.
Rosberg himself, a former Formula 1 world champion. In fact, both of the young Finns in the series, Mika Hakkinen and J.J. Leto with the Dallara team.
There you see second, third, and fourth together there, the two Ferraris, and Piquet, the Benetton meat in that sandwich. 27, Al Prost. There's second
place, Alesi, out of the bottom of your picture. Here comes Nelson Piquet, and finally, Alain Prost. Second, third, and fourth.
Al, his very self.
Picking up on the point I was making earlier, Piquet, running on those Pirelli tires, has not pitted and may not. Last year, the Pirelli qualifying tires were renowned for great speed, but their race tire came up short. Now it appears they not only have traction, but durability as well.
Well, they did a tremendous amount of testing with the Benetton team down in South Africa over the winter. Did, what, 6,000 miles of testing?
Let's get down for more on the Pirelli story with Rick DeBrule.
All morning, in fact, the Benetton team has been going out and taking a look at the skies and keeping those clouds overhead. In fact, they were saying that as long as the clouds hold, they think they can go the whole distance. We just went in and asked them, are they indeed going to pull it off? And they said, we'll see.
In fact, that's how Pirelli won their first Formula 1 victory with Gerhard Berger in the Benetton car, as a matter of fact, in Mexico City back around 1986, I believe. He ran non-stop while all the Goodyear runners pitted. He managed to steal away that first Formula 1 victory for Pirelli, as well as for Gerhard Berger. Second, third, and fourth place cars running very close together on the racetrack. Here you are on board with our leader. Ayrton Senna has checked out of this race, as they might say on the NASCAR Tour. He is the runaway leader in Phoenix. We'll be back in a moment. Light ship high above Phoenix, Arizona. You're watching the United States Grand Prix here on ESPN. Bob Barsha and David Hobbs with you at our announce position. And down in the pit lane below the Virgin airship, John Bizignano and Rick DeBrule keeping tabs on things. There is a bird's eye view of our leader in the race, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, who runs 37.6 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. Nelson Piquet in third position. Alain Prost fourth in a Ferrari 2-4. Stefano Modena fifth for Tyrrell. Satoru Nakajima one lap down in sixth, followed by Pierluigi Martini, Aguri Suzuki, Bertrand Gachot, Nicola Larini, and Gabriella Tarquini. NASCAR stock car action coming your way here on ESPN April 7th, live from Darlington International Raceway, the Trans-South 500. spring stop at one of the most fabled raceways in all of stock car racing, Darlington, the Trans-South 500, live April 7th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time here on ESPN. A yellow ribbon hangs from buildings all over Phoenix, Arizona. A happy time in America as the crisis in the Persian Gulf winds down. And we can turn to thoughts of sport. The world loves Formula-1. More than 250 million television viewers will be watching Formula-1 this year. As you watch the second-place Ferrari of Jean Alesi. Third is Nelson Piquet. Fourth is Ferrari teammate Alain Prost, right there in your picture. And the pit board for Alesi, excuse me, David, a moment ago, the pit board for Alesi read fuel, reminding him to watch his fuel meter. There's only enough fuel on board to go the distance, and you can use it up too quickly if you're too heavy with the right foot.
And although you can stop and change tires in Formula 1, you cannot stop and put more fuel on what you've got in the car at the beginning. And it looks like a fuel problem here already.
Alesi slowed remarkably. Piquet almost ran him over and then almost went around him. Now here comes Prost right up behind Piquet. It's a drag race down Jefferson Street. It looks like Piquet might have the advantage. Prost may have to go 3 wide or risk running into his teammate. Alesi gives way. Prost will now test Piquet at the first corner.
Woo. Piquet went round there 2 abreast.
So we go from Alesi, Piquet, Prost to Prost, Piquet, Alesi.
Well, it must be a fuel pickup problem because he's back on song now.
Let's see if we can listen in to the sound of this Ferrari and see if it's cutting out. John has more on this story from the pit lane.
Bob, as the Ferrari came out of the last corner, it was chugging very badly. I thought that he was trying to sort out gears, and therefore he was in too high of a gear. But as you say, that corner is definitely going to surge the fuel. And with this long race, an extended race by 10 laps, I just hope they didn't cut it too short on the fuel supply.
Jean Alesi now drifting back rapidly. Now Alain Prost must have marshaled his fuel reserves a little bit better. His car is virtually identical.
And he's streaking away now from Nelson Piquet, who had been turning in some dynamite laps. He was down in the 26s, the highest 1 minute 26s, which is the fastest he's been all day, trying to stave off this attempt. But as you can see, he's dropping back very much now from Alain Prost.
Now you're on board with our leader once again. Now we had a report from one of the observer stations that the #1 car may be leaking some fuel or some other fluid. We'll keep an eye on Senna for just a moment. Did I say this was Prost a moment ago? Ayrton Senna has led from the initial green light.
Certainly doesn't seem to be leaking as far as we can see, but of course we don't get as close a look as the guys who are standing at the edge of the track.
Notice the front wing. They've been narrowed this year in an effort to slow the cars. Of course, everyone carries a lot of front wing on a course like this where you need downforce. They scallop the interior parts of the front wing there to get air into the side pods that ram through the radiator and cool the engine. Now there's 28, Alesi, getting big bursts of flame from the exhaust headers. That little bit of smoke out there. Ooh, that's from the gearbox area. Recall a year ago in this race when Nigel Mansell exploded his Ferrari gearbox.
Well, whatever it is well and truly on fire. It looks like a breather, but it's obviously more than a breather.
And it may, if that's the gearbox area, it could seize up at any moment. If I'm the guy behind him there, number 4, Stefano Modena, I don't want to get too close to that Ferrari. At least not in a straight line.
Well, Modena, of course, is now caught between a rock and a hard place. The smoke coming out of their Ferrari there. Heavy smoke.
Just what we saw a year ago. Nigel Mansell went around, and finally the whole thing just gave up with a towering burst of flame as the transmission locked.
And as you rightly pointed out, what does Stefano Modena do now? Obviously he wants to try and capitalize on it and get round him as soon as possible. He can't afford, of course, to drop back.
Just about 10 laps remaining. Looks like John Alesi will try to stick it out. Running in 4th spot right now. The smoke continues. With 10 laps remaining, we'll take a quick time out and return to the U.S. Grand Prix. We'll keep an eye on Alesi's situation, not let you miss a thing. Here is your overall leader, Ayrton Phoenix, Arizona, where the number 28 Ferrari of Jean Alesi continues to smoke. Stefano Modena wants to get around him, and Alesi almost drove him up on the curb. Difficult place to pass, even with that Honda V10 behind your ears.
Now then, this of course is where you just want to be a bit careful getting too close behind, because if he does seize up, you'll be in severe trouble. Yeah, let him through.
Yeah, not without locking up the right front. There are points for the top 6 positions. 10 for first, 6 for second, and so on, down to 1 for sixth. At this point, Alesi finds himself in 5th position now with that badly smoking gearbox. Let's take another look at that turn where Stefano Modena got underneath John Alesi and watch the right front tire lock up.
Coming up Washington Street.
Our left,
on the brakes.
Right.
Alesi is thinking he's not going to let him through, but as you can see, his right front tire has stopped. But the smoke has not stopped. A good pass there by Modena, but of course he was passing a wounded opponent. Nelson Piquet on the Pirelli Shod Benetton board, lying in 3rd spot, losing ground 2 second spot, which is held by Alan Prost as we go back to our leader's car, coming to the last complex of 12 and 13, corner 12 and 13. Up to the wall there. As you can see, not using all the road, driving a relatively conservative race. His main concern now, of course, is to finish at all costs. So Senna will be taking it very steady, and he won't mind if that lead of his, which was 40 seconds, if it goes down to 0.4 of a second. He doesn't care as long as it's 0.4 of a second the right way.
Making a pretty picture for the sidelined artist. Ayrton Senna will be 31 years of age in 2 weeks' time when he will be racing in front of his Brazilian countrymen. There once again, John Alesi, arm up. That gearbox may have finally given it up. He goes straight on at one of the corners. Let's get down to John.
Well, obviously it is a gearbox problem. When he came out of the last corner a few laps ago and slowed, he was definitely having trouble shifting that gearbox into the gears that he wanted. It's the semi-automatic Ferrari. In talking to Ferrari, they said there should be no fuel problems whatsoever, and they were just hoping that it would keep smoking till the flag dropped. Obviously, it didn't quite make it.
Well, the onboard camera shows that the car is now stopped. Jean Alesi will be unclassified in the first event of the 1991 Formula 1 season as he tosses his gloves to the crowd. A nice bit of sportsmanship. You can't have a good day, make somebody else's day good.
He's getting paid too much. You know how much those gloves cost? They're a lot of money. I wear gloves like that for 5 years at a time.
In the winter, too.
Right. They are heat-resistant gloves.
Well, on a day that began with so much promise for so many of the new mechanical combinations and drivers in Formula 1, this man, Ayrton Senna, with his new combination of the McLaren chassis and the Honda V12 engine, have been doing just fine. His teammate Gerhard Berger dropped out of the race fairly early on, but no problems for perhaps the finest driver of his era, Ayrton Senna da Silva.
I wouldn't say no problems yet. We've got 10 laps to go nearly. So. There's John Alesi coming back, cleaning himself up before he gets back to the pit.
So his 24th Formula 1 start has not turned out the way he would like. His teammate Alain Prost is still in, running in 2nd place now to this man, Ayrton Senna. Now we say the race is 82 laps long, but we may run up on a 2-hour time limit, which governs any Formula 1 race, so the checkered flag could come out at any time. There is Prost, who was running as low as 6th earlier, but he has now made his way up into 2nd place, 38.7 seconds behind our overall leader. There is Nelson Piquet, running in 3rd position with that V8 Ford-powered Benetton.
Nelson Piquet, of course, winning the last 2 races of the 1990 season, having the race somewhat given to him in Japan, and driving extremely well in Australia to take another win, which obviously did the Benetton team no end of good, and had a very, very hard winter, testing, like I say, 5,000 or 6,000 miles of testing on all sorts of combinations of Pirelli tires. And these guys, of course, running an interim model of last year's car, the new one due to appear at Imola. Satoru Nakajima.
Nakajima running in 5th place behind his identically equipped teammate, the number 4 of Stefano Modena. Even television producers get cars mixed up in Formula 1. They look so much alike.
These cars, of course, the Tyrrells, also on Pirelli. And, of course, neither the Tyrrells and neither the Benettons have stopped for tyres, although Senna and the 2 Ferraris, both on Goodyears, chose to make pit stops.
Coming around to complete lap number 76. Ayrton Senna of Brazil over Alain Prost by 33 seconds now. Nelson Piquet just 5 seconds behind Prost, followed by Stefano Modena, Satoru Nakajima. And we'll be right back. Laps of the first of 16 races that make up the 1991 Formula 1 World Championship. Bob Varsha and David Hobbs with you. Ayrton Senna has led from the beginning. He stopped for tires, benefited from the crash of Riccardo Patrese and Roberto Moreno behind him, and now holds a handy 35.5-second lead over the second-place Ferrari of Alain Prost, followed by Nelson Piquet, Stefano Modena, Satoru Nakajima, and Pierluigi Martini.
About the fact
both in the points as the laps wind down. Let's get down to Rick de Bruyne in the pits.
Well, just yesterday, Senna was saying that actually he spent all morning working on his race setup. He was not working on his qualifying setup during the Saturday morning session. Then when the qualifying session went out, he went ahead and switched over, which makes you wonder about how blindingly fast he could have been had he worked on that. But the important thing is he's been preparing for the race all weekend, and it's showing right now.
A little bit of a tire lock-up at the driver's left front there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now here is Prost.
Prost in the 27 Ferrari, 3-time world champion. Ayrton Senna, 2-time world champion. Of course, Nelson Piquet running in third spot is also a 3-time champion. So these three drivers, first, second, and third, between them have won more than their fair share of world championships.
There is Nelson Piquet, who will turn 39 years of age this year. Oldest man in Formula 1. Now that René Arnoux has retired, Piquet himself nearly retired a couple of years ago before landing the Benetton drive. There is the fourth-place car. That is Stefano Modena, young Italian star now driving for the legendary Ken Tyrrell.
Of course, Jackie Stewart's been seen here. There's the Ferrari engine Minardi of
Pierluigi Martini.
Ooh, doesn't look too healthy.
No. Getting bad smoke. I wonder if it's an engine problem and perhaps related to what we just saw with John Alesi. There is the number 3 Tyrrell of 5th place of Toru Nakajima.
You can see from the front of his helmet that there's been a lot of oil sprayed around this place this afternoon. The front of his helmet is quite black there on the top. So a lot of cars have been dropping a lot of oil this afternoon.
This is the 6th place car. Now this is Pierluigi Martini, who stands to score a point for the Minardi team, but it appears he will not. The engine, that Ferrari motor, has apparently let go. And so that will promote Aguri Suzuki, who scored his first Formula 1 points in his home Grand Prix in Japan last fall, will move up into the 6th and final point-paying position today. As you watch, our overall leader, Ayrton Senna, the minutes running down. We have 4 laps remaining for our leader this time around, but we have less than 5 minutes to go in the race. Now another engine problem, that's Bertrand Gachot in the Jordan. We're losing cars left and right here in the final laps of this race.
Well, it'll be tremendous if Suzuki does get a point, because the LaRousse team, there we see Gachot in the new Jordan car. Obviously, his engine's gone. That uses the Ford engine, somewhat similar to the Benetton. They about a year behind in development all the time, but there we quite a regular little car park down at the end there. They got a long walk back. That's as far away from the pits as you can get, boys.
That's the far eastern end, which has just become a parking lot way down on Madison Street here in Phoenix.
Expensive parking lot. That's Suzuki in the 30.
Aguri Suzuki will score, as David said, a much-needed point. You can see very little in the way of sponsorship on that car. They lost their Japanese sponsor, the Espoo Corporation, personal sponsor to Aguri Suzuki. So I don't know who's hurting worse, Aguri or Gerard LaRousse, the team owner.
Well, they lost their sponsorship and then they lost their points. And I was talking to Gerard LaRousse yesterday that the problem is, of course, to try to persuade other sponsors to come in, ask what's happening.
There is the 9th place car. That is one of the new Modena Lamborghinis, a car originally designed by legendary Ferrari engineer Mauro Porgeri for a Mexican industrialist who wanted to start his own Formula 1 team. They got to Mexico, to the Mexican Grand Prix in Mexico City. They were about to unveil their car, and the man disappeared. Quite a little bit of a scandal. Now there is the AGS of Gabriele Tarquini, presently running in 9th position, I believe, now that Gachot is out of the race. Pierluigi Martini is out of the race. Tarquini may be in 8th position. Heck, he may score before this is over.
Gabriele Tarquini's teammate Stefan Johansson was one of those guys who failed to get through qualifying yesterday afternoon. Stefan Johansson getting off to yet another somewhat unfortunate Formula 1 season.
Another team in some financial trouble with the economic downturn worldwide. A lot of the Formula 1 teams who need as much as $3 million just for travel, not to mention driver salaries and all the mechanical equipment and everything else that goes on. In a world of $20 and $30 million budgets, that money is hard to come by. Some teams are suffering. There is Ayrton Senna, our overall leader. Just a few moments remaining in the opening round of the World Championship. We'll be back to the Iceberg Grand Prix in Phoenix in just a moment.
Is your
Senna turning slowly in his McLaren Honda. He doesn't need to move very quickly at this point. He holds a 31-second advantage over the second-place car of Alain Prost with just a couple of minutes remaining in the overall 2-hour time limit governing every Formula 1 race. That time limit often comes into play on street circuits like the one here in Phoenix because they are slower than the purpose-built circuits.
And, of course, the other thing that makes it come into play is when it rains and the race pace is a lot slower.
The debris of battle litters the streets of Phoenix. We've had crashes. A lot of the tire marbles, as they're called, bits of the rubber have come off the racing tires and are littering the streets.
Expensive rubber, too, because you were talking about the sponsorship these guys require. They spend as much as $2 million a year on tires. Obviously, these people don't. They get their tires free.
We are on the final lap, we are now being told. Ayrton Senna simply cruising. When he crosses the finish line, he will have one lap remaining. We're not on it, but we are about to be. We'll ride along with Ayrton Senna, receiving the official's word, 1 lap to go. And it has been as good a day as Ayrton Senna could have asked for. After not driving his car from the moment he stopped in Australia back in November until he picked it up again a week and a half ago in Estoril, Portugal, Ayrton Senna has cruised to the pole and now to the victory. The first 10-point victory in Formula 1 under the new scoring system. There's Alain Prost. Second place in the World Championship last year and second place today on the racetrack. Here comes Nelson Piquet in the Benetton, who has not stopped for tires all day long. He will come home third.
I'm sure they'll be relatively happy. I expect the Benetton people would like to have gone just a little bit quicker. But of course, you're dealing here all the time in just hundredths of a second. Except it seems for this guy here who deals in sort of big tenths.
4 cars remain on the lead lap. Senna, Prost, Piquet, and Stefano Modena in the Tyrrell. Satoru Nakajima in 5th place will pick up 2 points, 1 lap down. And Aguri Suzuki of Japan in 6th place will earn 1 championship point. He is 2 laps in arrears, followed by Nicola Larini and Gabriele Tarquini. The only remaining runners in this race of the original 26 cars that started. I believe we have 8 healthy cars on the racetrack.
Coming up to the last turn. Waving to the crowd. Now that's not something you see Ayrton Senna do very often.
Ayrton Senna is doing a lot for his image this year. He gave us the thumbs up to our cameras after qualifying. He's been very friendly with the press, which has not been his way. I tell you, somebody has spoken to both Dale Earnhardt and Ayrton Senna this year, I do believe. They are both very friendly guys this season.
Take that, you. Yep, a happy man.
With his 27th career Formula 1 victory, this man, Ayrton Senna, on canvas and on the racetrack, has now tied Jackie Stewart for second in all-time Formula 1 victories. He is far and away the leader in poles with 53. He is coming off a perfect weekend here at Phoenix, looking ahead perhaps to Brazil in 2 weeks when he will race before his countrymen on his birthday. Ayrton Senna, a dominating winner. You see the Brazilian flag there in green and blue and yellow. A lot of Brazilian fans here today. Listen to the crowd.
In fact, quite a few fans, which is a good sign for things to come in Phoenix. The race here has been greeted by very, very, very mixed feelings from the city of Phoenix. And it's to be hoped that they really get behind it and make it a success it could be.
Ayrton Senna cruising the 2.3-mile circuit on the streets of Phoenix, mounting as good a defense of his world championship as he could ask for. By far the slowest lap he's turned all day. ESPN, we miss you. Where have we gone? More Brazilian flags hailing the winner here in Phoenix. 15 races to come in 15 countries on 5 continents. tens of thousands of miles yet to be traveled. Lots of sleepless nights, lots of living out of a suitcase, and a guy like Ayrton Senna probably won't be home in Brazil for any appreciable length of time until next November. We'll be back to Phoenix in just a moment. On the streets of Phoenix, Arizona, Ayrton Senna has opened the defense of his World Championship title in a most convincing fashion with a dominating victory here in the season's first race. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Iceberg United States Grand Prix has been brought to you by Acura, experience precision-crafted performance. By Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Is it your car worth the extra protection? And by Dunlop Tires. Dunlop outperforms. On our winner's podium, Alain Prost on the left, Ayrton Senna in the middle, and Nelson Piquet on the right with 8 world championships between them. Celebrate in a style they've come to know well. To the left of your screen in the red pants and white shirt is Ron Dennis, who runs the McLaren team.
Wiping that very expensive champagne out of his eye, and now he's having second thoughts and giving his driver. See, Ron Dennis always says they have fun.
Al Rick de Brule is standing by with car owner Ken Tyrrell, who has 2 cars in the top 5 today. Here's Rick.
Well, Ken Tyrrell is a very happy man. Both cars finishing in the points. You have to like that new Honda engine.
Yeah, that's right. She's really worked well. I mean, it hasn't missed a beat all weekend.
What's the difference between that and the Ford engine?
About 100 horsepower.
Significant on the track.
I would say about 2 seconds a lap.
Ken Tyrrell looking forward to a new season.
Congratulations to the man they know as Chopper. We'll be back in just a moment to talk to our winner, Ayrton Senna, over Alain Prost, Nelson Piquet, Stefano Matta, Satoru Nakajima, and Aguri Suzuki in the top 6.
One athlete has been on the cover of
round of the World Formula 1 Championship. Here are the points. Ayrton Senna scoring 10 rather than 9 under the new Formula 1 point system. Alain Prost with 6 useful points, followed by Nelson Piquet, Stefano Matta, Satoru Nakajima, and Aguri Suzuki, 2 Japanese drivers in the top 6. Now here's John Bizignano with our winners.
Thank you very much, Bob. Ayrton Senna, are you covered with sweat or champagne?
A lot more champagne than any sweat, really. I had a 2 good shower with Jean-Marie Balestre and my team manager.
Well, that's a good sign. Ayrton, again, you made it look easy. Yesterday you were talking about that the car could qualify quickly, but you weren't sure it could go the whole race, but you looked so confident throughout the entire event.
No, the car ran very well. I had small problems only with the gearbox, and also the car balance was not optimal. It's the first time I ran a Grand Prix distance with this car, and the balance, the setup was not quite right, so it was very difficult to drive, but I was able to maintain a good pace and go through the lap, the back markers safely, and come in for tires at the right time. So it was okay to cope with the speed on the circuit of the race, and the car was reliable, engine, car, everything. So it's a great way to start the season, particularly considering that we have only started to run this new car, and if we have reliability right now, and that performance, we can only go forward from here.
And congratulations on scoring 10 points, not 9. Now, Alain Prost, the Ferrari, you looked behind from the first corner and things just weren't as competitive as you would hope they'd be. What was the problem out there?
The problem, I think we were not fast enough to compete with the McLaren today. In fact, I had also problems, especially with the clutch, and I also had a long pit stop. But in any case, I cannot win the race. So I'm quite happy with this position. 6 points today, considering the track is not very good for the Ferrari, also not very good for me. I think it's not too bad. Last year, at the same point, I did not finish the race, so I had 9 points disadvantage. Today, it's not too bad.
Well, Alain, at least you did gain some points today, and the Ferrari should be better suited for Brazil.
All right, thank you, John. Indeed, the Ferrari should be in great position in Brazil, and we'll be coming to you in 2 weeks' time from Sao Paulo, March 24th. There you see more of the Formula 1 schedule this year. With 2 Brazilians in the top 3 today, we should see a wild crowd at Sao Paulo. 3 races in July, and several new circuits to show you this year as ESPN takes on the Formula 1 trail. David, your final thoughts of today's race?
Well, as you can see, Senna has got a very bad cold, and if the balance of his car was that bad and it was extremely difficult to drive, it doesn't say much for the rest of them for the rest of the season. But I think we're going to see some very competitive races.
Well, we're certainly wired and ready to go, and we'll be covering all the action in Formula 1 this year for you on ESPN. We hope you'll be with us every step of the way. For David Hobbs, John Bizignano, and Rick DeBrule, I'm Bob Barsha. We hope you've enjoyed the United States Grand Prix from Phoenix. So long from the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona.